So good morning, everybody. Hope you're all doing well today. I know it's early. We're going to spend an hour talking about sector strategies and seeing how we can evaluate kind of their application in McHenry County or increased application as it may be. For those of you who have been involved in sector strategies, you know it's a very comprehensive, long-term, multi-year strategy, but it does have they have extraordinary benefits to both businesses and workers, and they also spread out across the community. There's lots of excellent benefits to adopting sector strategies. It's a big commitment, though. It's a big time and resource commitment. So I think we want to have enough of a briefing about what they are and how to do them to see what kind of action steps we want to come up with for your county and your board. There are already regional sector strategies in play, and we'll talk about those in just a little bit. But I think there's probably two action opportunities to be thinking about as we go through this. One is to increase McHenry County's involvement in the regional strategies to the extent that they would apply, and bringing more of that detail to apply in the county would help. And the second is to determine if there are independent sector strategies that would be good for McHenry County that maybe are not regional strategies, or that the region doesn't want to adopt but your county does. So that's at least two kind of paths we might talk about at the end here about pursuing. Also, a big reminder, the sector strategies are a big component in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. They are required part of the state plan, they're required part of a regional plan, they're required part of a local plan. There's reference to be able to invest in them and spend money on them. So they're really a feature of the WIOA. So three general discussion topics for this morning. We're going to talk about sort of what are sector strategies, just a quick overview so everybody has a general understanding if you're new to this. And what are the benefits? What do they do for an industry, the businesses, and the community? An overview, again, very briefly, how they're developed and implemented, and what is kind of the sector role, and maybe what is carving out a little bit of detail about a board role. And then some time talking about some action steps, where it is we want to go with this. All right, how are we doing so far? Any questions, anybody? Okay, so in general, sector strategies are kind of a community-wide partnership that includes a combination of industry representatives, economic developers, representatives from the education and training community, representatives of organized labor and workforce, the public workforce development system, community-based organizations, and any other relevant community stakeholders that come together with an intent to strategically address human resource challenges in your region or area. It's an intensive focus on a specific industry or sector, and we're going to talk just in a minute about the difference between those, over a sustained time where you create really customized solutions that are beneficial to multiple employers and workplaces in the region, strengthens economic growth and competitiveness, and it helps workers by creating pathways both into the jobs in those industries and then within their progression, kind of advancement. It sustains and increases middle-class jobs, kind of the original intent and goal of sector strategies from the workforce side. It requires significant leadership by kind of a convener or an organizer that has deep industry knowledge. And then there's really systemic change. It really does kind of change across the community, and there's benefits for the industry, workers, and the community as a whole. Just a quick note at the bottom of each slide here are some of my quotes for the resources I'm using and what I'm sourcing. But there is a tremendous amount of literature out on sector strategies now. They've been in force, excuse me, in force for a pretty solid decade. So the how-tos and the why-tos, the benefits, the advantages, there's just a ton of literature available. What they have found is that these strategies have a good potential for wealth creation. So when you solve human resource challenges within a sector and you create a pathway to those jobs and progression within those sectors and industries, you end up creating wealth for your community. The investment is definitely exceeded by what you put into it. The investment is not minor, but the outcome really returns that investment. It really aids all components within that sector: education, labor, business. It really has a positive impact on all of the individual pieces. And it's a common response. It helps us go from individual business issues and individual worker issues to see what's common and would be good for all. And then just to stress, a sector strategy is for emphasis. If you're not an employer in that sector, it does not mean you're excluded from economic development and workforce development activities. It's just a way to create a strategic emphasis on key, on critical components of your local economy. So just for a minute, I want to kind of talk about the terminology. So industries are a list of kinds of businesses that are classified within the North American Industry Classification System: manufacturing, retail, services. And sectors or clusters can cross industries by finding competing, complementary, independent firms that do business with each other and have common needs. They share suppliers or processes or technology. And probably the driving force for sector strategy for the workforce development system is that the need for the supply of workers, just by numbers and by skill sets, is common across all of the businesses in a sector. So sometimes it's an industry. Manufacturing is an industry, and it's also a very common to have a strategy for that sector. And then healthcare is a sector because it crosses multiple industries, and it's also pretty common for large regional areas to have both of those kinds of strategies. So the next couple of slides, I'm just going to outline some of the list of criteria that is used when considering development of sectors. There's 4 or 5 pretty key criteria that are used. One of the main ones is the competitive advantage. So it's taking a look at your region and your region's productivity and looking for a competitive edge by comparing it to how productive that kind of industry or sector is in the nation. So it's called the location quotient. The formula is down below. It's really kind of advanced economics. But simply put, it's looking at your gross regional product compared to the total regional product and finding those industries that have a higher return and then comparing those industries to what kind of return they have as a whole. And when your location quotient is high, it means you have a competitive advantage in that industry. So without having to spend more time kind of explaining the formula for that, your McHenry County labor report, the one I think the board issued for 2014, I know we also do it quarterly updates, Jeff, but the 2014 labor report on page 50 already has done a location quotient analysis for the county. So it's kind of a complicated chart, but it does give you an idea that the data exists so that in McHenry County we have an idea of what your competitive advantage is, and that would be a place to find out if you have a competitive advantage on industries or sectors that the whole region doesn't. So there's at least a source there to start thinking about if we want to do a sector strategy that's unique to McHenry County and not a regional approach. That would be some data to use. Projected growth. This is a data, research analysis, interviewing of based on what you know about the businesses in your region. And looking at projected growth, you want to keep in mind is if that growth will cause some kind of gap in either the number of workers or the skills of workers. So if the industry or sector is growing, and we have data that says it's growing, the next piece of information to say is how we're going to meet that demand. Do we have the numbers of workers, and do the workers have the skills? And that leads you to development of some of the solutions. The economic impact is looking at sales to the region, the kind of wages that are produced by the industry and return to the community, average wages that are kind of at least a self-sufficiency wage. So that's the economic impact is one of the other key criteria to look at. There's also possibility of creating a sector strategy in a growing sector, a new sector in your economy. So there's two pieces of criteria combined here. One is sustainability of the sector, and the other is future emergence. So this is just looking at your kind of bread and butter industries and how sustainable they are long term, and then balancing that with an opportunity to look at potential for advantage in the future. So you look at both of those indicators as well. And then there's a list of other factors. I've kind of summarized some of them here. Resources and funding available, or your capacity to leverage funding for an investment in sector strategy. The pre-existence of expertise or the pre-existence of some association or organization to be an intermediary or to serve as kind of the convener of the sector. You want to get a sense of commitment of employers to participate, to invest time and resources. And then the nature of the demand. Is this long-term chronic? Is this short-term? Looked at the industry itself, what kinds of jobs and wages, and certainly whether or not there's progression and career ladders within that industry. So this is kind of quickly and briefly a list of some of the key criteria that are used to identifying sectors or industries to target. Let me just pause for a minute. Are there any questions on this so far? Let's see, we have Ro, Mike, Jeff, Julie, Barbara, Donna, Don, Diane, Dave. Anybody have any questions or comments so far? Nope. Not yet. Okay. So I also wanted on this page just to spend some time talking about this list here. Let's see if I can get my pen, sorry. So this list here on the right are the four sectors that have already been identified by your Metro Chicago region and already have strategies underway. I looked to see what I could find about kind of the operations and kind of try to get myself up to date on what is going on in those sectors, and didn't find a lot available kind of in the general internet, but I bet you there's a lot of detail available since you're part of the region. But there's a biomedical and life sciences that, read healthcare sector strategy, and it's specifically related to biomedical. There's a business, technical, and financial services sector strategy coming out of the region. There's a manufacturing strategy, and there's a transportation and logistics. So if we talk about the criteria we just reviewed, the competitive advantage, the growth, the economic impact, sustainability, and other factors, these were the four originally identified at the regional level for development of sector strategies. So I think if we keep this list in mind, we start to have some idea about action steps, and that is, how do these sector strategies, how are they being experienced within the county? How do they apply to the county? Is this the same list that would apply to your county? Are there other sectors or industries that you might want to add for a county level sector strategy in addition to participating in the regional? All right, just get the coffee there. So Jeff, is there a big involvement with the McHenry County in these regional strategies? I mean, can you tell me a little bit about how they're developed and working and what's going on with them?
Yeah, it was an effort put together by the Metro Boards of Workforce, the Workforce Board of Metro Chicago, which is the 7 workforce boards in and around Chicago. And we tried to pull up data that identified what our strengths were. It is a few years old, so I mean, there's probably a little bit of change to it, but.
So are there groups meeting regularly by sector, or are there, I mean, can you tell, I guess, to date, if any of these 4 have specifically benefited McHenry County?
Yeah. And we do have a regional meeting coming up for the Northeast Illinois region in Moraine Valley, the Moraine Valley Community College on December 11th. And the whole focus, a big part of the focus will be about the sector strategies.
Excellent. Because one of the things I think I said at the beginning of the webinar is to really see how well developed these are and what, if anything, we can draw down to the steps is to become sort of attached to any strategy that we think will benefit the county.
Right. I mean,
okay. Any questions? Sorry. Go ahead.
The focus of that regional meeting is planning, is the regional plan. So sector strategies will be a big part of the discussion for that. I know that everybody has identified manufacturing or advanced manufacturing is one of the sectors that we have to look at.
Right. So I think armed with county data, when you go to the regional planning, I think, you know, the way this typically works and the way I see this working in WIOA is the state's going to identify state-level sectors that are, you know, meet those criteria for the state. And then if not already, if Illinois is comparable to other states with a state-level approach, they'll ask each region to pick the sectors that apply to their region and create strategies for them. But that still leaves open the opportunity at the local level to add a sector strategy that's not on the regional or the state list. So just keeping that in mind. And it may be a more longer term, but you may have, for example, when I looked at your labor report, the retail industry is pretty substantial in terms of number of workers. And when I combine that with the numbers in accommodation and food service, you know, another high number of workers, that starts to look like a substantial sector. And in many areas, they call that hospitality or tourism, or actually just call it retail. So there's an opportunity to see, you know, what the state is targeting, what the region is targeting, and then just keep open the opportunity for a local strategy. However, sequentially, I would see probably your board, you know, maybe over the next year, more involved in the regional strategies and making sure they apply and benefit the county than maybe potentially starting your own county level strategy. But that is an option. So again, I mentioned earlier, there's a tremendous amount of, sorry? Is someone talking? Okay, so there's a fair amount of research and literature on the outcomes of these strategies. This is a list that I got from a Texas report. There's a list on the next page from a Massachusetts report. But the outcomes of these strategies create this kind of benefit. So a sector strategy helps you build infrastructure in a lot of different ways, but it's human resource development infrastructure, and that infrastructure, once it's created, you know, a coordination between the business, the education, the worker, the public workforce, and economic development community. And then it leads toward innovation. So once you have a sector strategy in place, you can advance being innovative. Kind of access to intellectual property, it gets shared across the sector. Access to talent, kind of really spreading those resources across the sector, graduates, students. The research is, again, it's a combination of community involvement as opposed to independent organization of developed research, kind of collective research. It yields customized training and career development for employees. Partnerships that are really active and dynamic, and they evolve to kind of meeting ongoing existing needs and changing needs. And then sort of an overall good quality of life. You get better schools, you get resources kind of already networked so you can tap into them. And then a Massachusetts report created a list of both advantages for businesses and for workers. Some of the highlights are here: reduced turnover, improved operation, productivity, quality, competitiveness, better relationships between labor and management. You get upgraded skills targeted to that industry. The workers that you hire then have skills that match your needs when the sector strategy is effective. Different levels and lists of cost savings, and multiple employers realize these cost savings. As I said before, networks that are already created and established, and increased diversity in the workplace. And the advantages for the workers include higher rates of employment. Especially this study looked at some of the disadvantaged populations, and we're finding that the sector strategy helped some of those populations that are usually less successful have increased rates of employment, higher salary, better benefits, more hours worked by workers that participate in sector strategies, increased job satisfaction because the focus on the job, the training, and the opportunity for advancement creates a more satisfied worker, and they do have increased prospects for advancement. And they have ongoing access to education before they work and while they work. So these are just some of the findings from a couple of different states about the benefits of sector-based. So how do these look? I think this is a pretty good slide for promoting increased involvement in sector strategies. Would you guys agree?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, which of these benefits do you think look most ideal for your involvement?
Well, for the work and businesses, you know, being able to get a skilled workforce and retain them. It's good for business, but it's also good for the workers because now they'll have something to market to the business.
Right. I mean, I think the list of advantages for business is pretty compelling. Are there employers on the webinar who could comment on? Yeah, you really have to have a handle on these advantages to make the commitment in the strategy, which is why I'm kind of asking people to really look at this list and see which of these are most appealing to you.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes?
Oh, okay. This is Donna. I wasn't sure if my microphone was working or not. I was just going to mention that the whole idea of increasing advantages for business, particularly the second from the last bullet, increased networks, increased collaboration to benefit all companies. I mean, that's the kind of magnet situation that attracts more businesses, and that's what creates corridors of sectors, whether it's in Silicon Valley or in Fayetteville, Arkansas, with retail and trucking and chickens and things like that. I mean, it's really exciting to see this kind of strategy sort of rolling out from a strategic standpoint.
Excellent. Thank you, Donna. Yeah, I think, and again, I'll add to that. Let's assume, for the purposes of this conversation, that any sector that McHenry County might locally want to invest in, whether or not it's a regional or state strategy, that there's a template out there. So there's, you won't ever be starting from quote unquote scratch. So how is it that another state or kind of sister county did a manufacturing or a transportation logistics or a healthcare sector, and then using it as a case study to just point out, like this kind of bullet, that after sector strategy is in play, you end up with this network of businesses, economic developers, workforce developers, associations and organizations, all in collaboration mode, and it tends to stay that way. It has long-term legs in terms of benefits. Thanks. Anybody else? Questions or comments on sort of supporting this strategy? Okay, we're gonna have a chance to revisit it at the very end as well. So we'll have another discussion. Now let's talk a little bit about the how-to. This is kind of a macro level view, just generalized into 3 steps for a sector strategy. And this is also organized in a guidance tool that the National Fund for Workforce Solutions has produced. So the first step in part 1 is really organizing, creating a partnership. So choosing a sector, obviously based on the criteria that we talked about previously, or perhaps in McHenry County, choosing one of the regional sectors and wanting to expand upon it by putting a fair amount of local investment and resources into it. So the strategy perhaps already exists, and you want to really pull it down and make it more real practical and have more applications at the local county level. Excuse me, including developing expertise at the county level on that sector, and identifying an organizer. So the convener, the organizer, is a pretty crucial part of a sector strategy, and then engaging employers and workers. So that's kind of the front end piece. Then it's followed by getting the work done. So convening, operating, and sustaining the sector partnership. And here's a list of the roles of the organizer or the convener or the kind of the main leader organization in this. So they're responsible for convening the full partnership, making sure that there's a high level of frequent communication. People understand and are aware and kind of marshaling the progress, ensuring there's employer and worker leadership involved in the strategy. A really big role is accessing and aligning the resources and brokering the relationships, making sure all the right people in the room and all the right hands are being shaken and everybody is understanding what they bring together what they bring to the table, and making sure they do bring something to the table and accessing those resources, and then translating down to a real specific level, putting that into career services for workers. So the sector strategy goes from macro level, functioning case manager, job seeker, or training recipient, that they understand and have access to the pathways that you're building within the sector strategy. And then really making sure you're making progress and achieving the goals that you set out, ensuring that there's value for employers and workers, and making sure that there's systems impact. So this is a very high-level, kind of brief summary way of looking at a how-to for a sector strategy. And then I want to just kind of maybe drill down a little bit more. In many areas, the local board or a state board or combination of boards in a region have been let me just go back. They have been the convener or the organizer. So in many parts of the country, this role here is played by local boards. In other areas, it's a Chamber of Commerce or the Manufacturing Association or kind of a business organization is an organizer. So really thinking about this role and who might play this role. And it's a unique leadership role. So giving some real thought to that. It's the most, it requires the most commitment and the biggest investment of time, energy, and resources to be the organizer of a sector strategy. So again, it's worth kind of really thinking about who that would be. So whether or not the board is the leader and the organizer and the convener of the sector strategy, I think the board's role has always been alignment and will continue to be alignment, but I just wanted to talk about it in relation to sector strategies. And there's two kinds of alignment I see that are important roles for boards with relationship to being strategic and having goals. So the horizontal alignment is really, you are a board whose membership cuts across the community. And so horizontal alignment is making sure all of the key components across the community around workforce development are aligned with the strategic vision, mission, and goals. So for example, when you have a sector strategy identified at the local level in McHenry County, the board would want to work to make sure that whatever is relevant for that sector strategy to economic developers, it's in their plan. Whatever about that sector strategy is relevant to education and training providers, they include it in their planning and their implementation. Whatever is relevant to businesses and business organizations. So you start to see a sector strategy aligned horizontally across the community based on the board's work. And some of the best I've seen is really the same language, is used within the planning and implementation tools that these different organizations have. And then vertical alignment is then within all of the unique organizations that are collaborating on the sector strategy. You take that goal and you drill it down into every aspect of operations and staff activities, or you at least evaluate all your operations and staff activities and determine how this sector strategy may and ought to and should impact what's going on. So horizontal alignment is really across the community, and the vertical alignment is that each board member's organization gets to kind of take that sector strategy and the vision and mission and goals of that strategy and look within their own organization and drill down vertically. So another picture of this on slide 11 is, again, I'm really seeing this as a board rule. So just on my Rubik's Cube here, so the horizontal alignment is really across the top. Is really across the top. So these are all of the organizations involved, and the board would want to make sure they're aligned around that sector strategy. They know about it, they know what the goals are, and they make a determination about how their piece of the community is involved. And then there's this vertical strategy. So within my own organization, how do I drill down and evaluate current operations and staffing and transaction in order to align? So horizontally, you mobilize the community, you increase the partners and partnerships, you make sure you're informing, community-wide informing, and you're really advocating for alignment around this strategy. And then within the public workforce development system, so this is directly related, vertical alignment, you're looking at the workforce improvement services, aligning your business services, aligning your one-stop system, and aligning your programs with that strategy. So there may be, again, I think a big opportunity around alignment to look at the existing regional strategies and then bring in which of those apply. And I think the second thing, and you mentioned this already, Jeff, is that I think your regional planning, because sector strategies is a critical piece, is another opportunity to participate regionally, but also to think locally and to be thinking about how do I bring a regional strategy so that there's direct benefit, advantage, and impact on McHenry County. And that's my version of what really the board role is in this kind of strategy. And drilling it down a little farther, then you use the sector strategy to consider your program policy, your funding policy, kind of your investment strategy. So work-based training is just an example. These are the work-based training resources that you have under WIA, and you would want to take these resources and align them with the manufacturing sector, the transportation and logistics sector, and the business, financial, and technical services sector, if those are three of the regional sector strategies apply to your county. And with the information on the occupations and the skills that are required individually in each, so what occupation and skills are required in the manufacturing sector, what occupation and skills are required in the transportation and logistics sector, what occupation and skills are required in the business, financial, and technical services strategy, what are the skills. You have a ton of information then to start saying, okay, what kind of investment with our training programs can the board make to specifically support the skills advancement within each sector? And then you draw on something like a career pathways, and you see how often occupations from one sector can move to a different sector. And that's another way to see advancement. So the question around sector strategies specifically for boards is how to align our pre-employment services. So, for example, you could have manufacturing be a key sector, and McHenry County wants to expand the sector strategy, bring it down from the regional level, and really get more active at around the local level. it might translate to something like a class in the center called Math for Manufacturing. So it's a pre-employment service, and it's targeted to what kinds of math skills someone going into maybe an entry-level job in that sector might need. So that's an example of board roles aligning across sectors and drilling it down to training programs. And then you might want to say, have a policy that says, for example, we want 80% of our on-the-job training dollars to be invested in one of these three key sectors. We want to build an apprenticeship program in one of these key sectors. We want all of our youth work experience to be in one of these 4 or 5 sectors. So I'm just kind of making that up, but it's really taking the sector, using your role that I've called alignment, drilling it down and seeing how it might affect all kinds of policy discussions that you will be having at the local level. And that's how you really bring a sector strategy alive. You really look for the opportunities for alignment around programs, training, and funding. Okay, Ed, any questions on this? This is a kind of a busy chart, and I went over it quickly, but I just wanted to give you some examples. Yes?
This is Julie. I've got a question. I know this was up to the board to decide how many sectors, but in reality, you obviously have to have more than one, but probably no more than 3 to 4. I mean, if you're saying this is a time commitment, what seems to be out there as far as how many sectors are people really drilling into and hammering home on this stuff?
Well, and excuse me, let me answer the question at different levels. So a state tends to have, 8 or 10, and it's not unusual for a state your size to have probably at least 10 key sectors to your economy, right? There's probably at least 10 sectors within which Illinois has competitive advantage. Transportation and logistics is my favorite example. And then when it drills down to the regional level, the region usually looks at the state list and says, these 3 apply to these regions, the other 6 or 7 don't. And then at the local level, I think what you do, Julie, is even while there might be 3 that apply, I think you want to be sequential about your approach. I think you want to get one sector strategy, either a current regional strategy that's already in play. You want to bring it down to the local level and bring it alive locally. Even if you have 3 sectors identified from McHenry County from the 4. I do think the second issue is if there's a sector that the county wants to address that's not on the regional list, that gives you a different opportunity to maybe pull a regional strategy down, expand it locally, and maybe start a new sector strategy locally. That's kind of how I would see it. But you're right, you don't want 4 or 5 going. You might want 2, maybe 3 in some kind of process max. And that's not unusual. Are there other questions? Was that helpful, Julie?
Thank you.
Okay. Good question.
I don't know what all the background is.
So one more. I'm sorry, Jeff?
I don't know where all the background's coming from, but if someone's having background issues, you do have a chat function also, don't you, Melanie?
Yes. So let me just repeat, because there is some background noise. If you are listening in on the webinar in an area with some ambient noise, I'm showing you now there's a mute button on the control panel. If you could hit the mute button and only unmute yourself when you're talking, that would help our recording. So that's right there. And also on the same panel, if you want to raise a question and I haven't paused for your question, you can definitely type a question in the chat box here. And as I pull my control back out, I will see that question and we can address it. So one more example of bringing a sector strategy alive, really like within the center itself. So these are the types of strategies that you have, and they're either transactions, hiring transactions for their services, like training. And then you look at this type of strategy and decide in which sector it applies and what specifically you would do within that sector.
Yeah, the placement wasn't there, but I can pull it up. And on the sun alert, there was no placement there, but I can pull up the placement.
So I think I'm maybe going to mute all just for purposes of the recording. All right, I just did a mute all button and I'll unmute in a minute. I just wanted to remove that background noise. So within, actually at the center level, here's your strategies of the different kinds of transactions. Then you could actually quite literally see this kind of chart being completed. I've inserted hospitality retail sector here because I think it's one of the sectors that McHenry County might want to consider independent from the 4 that the regions identified. So in advanced manufacturing, some of their human resource challenges are pipelines. They tend to not get enough actual bodies into the hiring processes that they need. So how is it that we see a sector strategy that includes a strategy for creating pipelines? This is like, I think I've mentioned this before, this is going into high schools and asking high school students, would you like to work with robots? For example, that's a pipeline strategy. And then I already mentioned this one. Manufacturers tend to say that within the hiring process, a fair number of their recruits or the candidates that come in fail the math test. So backing into a sector strategy for advanced manufacturing, one of the things that the one-stop system and its partners might want to do is math for manufacturing classes. So it's either a review or a brush up or good hardcore training in the skills that are specific to math. And for example, advanced manufacturers who are doing hiring processes could start referring candidates to the center that didn't pass the math test. Candidate comes to the center, takes the math class, increases their math skills, and goes back and retests, and perhaps passes the math test. So it's an example of seeing each sector have a very specifically identified strategy at the local level within the center. And now you're seeing the alignment from, we went to a meeting for regional planning, we decided advanced manufacturing is a targeted sector for the region. We've decided as a board in McHenry County that we want to bring that advanced manufacturing sector strategy into the county and expand upon it and make it more relevant and productive and effective at the county level. And now you're doing an alignment function. You look at the kinds of strategies you have, and you and you create this list of kinds of services that you might want to be involved in. Oops, I just lost it. Okay, So in transportation, for example, sector, you might need an increase in a certain number of licenses, for example, CDLs. So you increase or you expand or you create more training providers who do CDL training. This is just kind of me thinking out loud about how you actually bring a sector strategy alive at the local level.
Melody, Melanie, I just wanted to ask you, did you, this is Donna, did you choose those three sectors because they might have some relevancy to McHenry County in particular? Because they do seem like they, have some opportunity for applying to our county.
Yes, so as McHenry County is one of the 7 counties in the Metro Chicago region, and you'll be doing regional planning with those other counties, that group of 7 have previously identified 4 sectors. Advanced manufacturing, transportation, and logistics were on the list. Business, technical, and financial services is on the list, and biomedical and life sciences is on the list. The reason I added the retail hospitality sector just as an example, and within that sector, it's a high turnover industry typically. You would want to make sure you have a real high level of referral processing going from the center out. Customer service is issues that most employers in this sector will tell you they have trouble with. So you might want a pre-employment program on customer service and create some kind of credentialing or certification for it. These jobs in this sector tend to work in teams. You might want some team building. And one of the key occupations within this sector is they take young, fairly inexperienced workers and advance them to supervisory jobs fairly quickly when often these individuals don't have the training. So the reason I, in particular, to answer your question specifically, Donna, the reason I added this one as an example is because it's not on the regional list, and if McHenry County wants to consider a unique individual sector strategy just in the county, this might be one. Your 2014 McHenry County Labor Report shows there's as many jobs in McHenry County projected for 2017. There's as many jobs in this sector as there are in this sector. There's 8,000 or 10,000 jobs each in both of these. So it's an example of, as we think about action planning and where your board might go, you might want to expand the regional strategy, piggyback on the region, and bring more of what's going on in the manufacturing sector into McHenry County and bring it alive there and create real meaning around what that strategy could do. And you might want to consider a unique independent strategy that's not on the regional list, but that would be good for you. So that's why I used that as an example.
Great. Thank you.
Welcome. So there is a fair amount, again, of literature out there. One of the things I like best about the sector strategies and their decades, 15 years plus experience is there's really good evaluation frameworks. So if you want to, maybe at the December meeting, Jeff, these are the questions you and the board members have in mind. For the existing list of 4 sector strategies that I've identified in Metro Chicago region, what, the Northeast region is, did you rename it?
No, the region is actually based on the Economic Development Region 4 for the state, which is the same as the Workforce Board of Metro Chicago membership.
I think I like the name Northeast region better. Anyway, so for those 4 sectors, these are the questions you might want to ask about the sector progress to date. What is the impact on employers and industry in McHenry County? What is the impact of job seekers and workers in McHenry County? So that might be a way to evaluate progress on any of the 4 existing strategies to see which, if they're having any direct impact or which ones you want to import and expand on. And then there's really, again, basically step-by-step table of content. This is the sector strategy, really good sector strategy website. It's called sectorstrategy.org. They have a toolkit. This is online, and it walks you through getting started, engaging state leaders and industry leaders, getting your public partners on board, promoting your regional economy, how to sustain and fund a strategy, what kind of data you should be using, all the way down to evaluation. So there's a tremendous amount of resources available if indeed you want to expand a regional strategy or build your own. All right, so we have a couple of minutes to talk here. What do people think about this strategy? Can I get some general comments? I like what Donna had to say. Are there other folks that want to provide some general comments? Jack, Diane, Barbara, Raul, Terry. Hi.
Nope, I'm good. It's Diane.
Do you like the strategy? People think this is worth attaching yourself to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, I'll just say I think it makes a lot of sense. This is Donna again. And Jeff and Julie, one thing I think we should talk about is how we can align other county board committees to some of the strategies, which we can chat later about. But there are other committees that
Excellent.
Partner with us.
Excellent. That's a good point. Well, I think the real question is how to make it more than, some kind of line item in the regional plan. I think one of the concerns I would leave you with is to make sure that any regional sector strategy is vibrant in McHenry County. So even if you don't develop anything new or unique to yourself, I would, find a way to identify one of those key sector strategies that are already on the board. I don't know how far or how much they've done, and make sure that the regional plan endorses supporting local development of the strategies, and have your board really figure out how to take one of those strategies and really bring it alive at the county level. Others, thoughts on the strategy question? Is there a committee, Jeff, that would kind of take the lead on this that already exists within your board?
Strange you should ask, because we have a board meeting next week where I was going to ask for volunteers to a task force.
So start as a task force, and then, I think it needs, probably needs or might need a permanent home on one of your committees once the task force kind of gets the front end work done.
So, I want to do the analyze the existing regional and see what really hones in for McHenry County. If those are appropriate, or which ones are appropriate, or if there's something else that's appropriate.
Right. I would say, given the numbers, when I looked at your labor report, I would say, given just the employment numbers and the projections, that maybe there's a chance to bring whatever they're doing at the regional level in advanced manufacturing down to the local level. It seems like that's got the most indication of progress going at the regional level. That might be one to really kind of expand locally, and then over time reevaluate another one, or starting one of your own.
Yeah, advanced manufacturing seems to be the one that everybody keeps putting out there. So.
Yeah.
And that's kind of universal across everywhere. So.
Right. And if it's already organized, there's already resources, there's already activities and kind of investments. It may be, and I'm using this word in quotes, it may be as easy as just pulling that down to be really vibrant and really beneficial in your county.
And the McHenry County Economic Development Corporation is very keen on the manufacturing sector.
Excellent. Okay, so we did.
Cameron joined us for this call today.
So we did kind of an overview of what the strategies are and how they tend to get developed based on criteria. We talked about kind of the benefits to at least employers and workers, although the benefits to are really community-wide, lots of good infrastructure, and it just spills out to the community. And then we did a little bit on kind of getting started. I think the action plans are there's regional planning in December, and you're going to attach sector strategies will be a feature of the discussion. And then I just heard Jeff say you're going to kind of look at the regional sector strategies underway, evaluate them for their application to the county and for their current impact on the county. And then maybe over time give some thought to what your county might need that's not on the regional list.
Yeah.
Excellent.
All right. I will.
Good?
Yes, the 2015 labor report's just about ready, so I'll send you a draft of it today. And what's on tap for next week? Because we have our board meeting Wednesday morning, but I know we have a call scheduled again for Tuesday morning.
Yes. Career Pathways is next Tuesday morning. And they're a good combination. Those two go hand in hand.
Oh. Yeah, and the board members that chimed in on the topic list that you'd given us thought so too. So we look forward to next Tuesday. We'll send a reminder out again. And do you have a discussion topic list, an agenda list for next week?
I will get that to you, and I will send it with the link.
Very good. We'll get that out and hopefully have some good participation again.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Melanie and Julie.